What you just saw took more than 4 hours to shoot and so much more time to edit. And today I want to share with you the whole process from shooting on location until the editing room. How did we create what you just saw? Oh yeah, good morning and welcome to this new episode. Today I'm super pumped because I had this idea of following a photographer and doing a hyperlapse through Chicago for a very long time, maybe the past 6 months. I kind of thought, why don't I share with you the whole process instead of showing you just the final result? I want to show you how I did it because first of all, I don't think it was perfect, which leaves a lot of room for improvement. I made a lot of mistakes and I want to share those with you at the end so that you can avoid doing that. Alright, so first thing first, before I ever got out of the house and started shooting anything, I needed to define my story. My story was simply that I wanted to follow a photographer through his adventures shooting Chicago, and I wanted to do that into a hyperlapse / stop motion. I thought it would be cooler and I got super inspired by some photographers I met a few weeks ago at Kando that were doing that. So thank you Kyle for the inspiration, thank you Colette. It's something I've been wanting to do for the past 6 months, but you know how when you have a creative idea and you think it's gonna take you a lot of time or it's new, you actually push it back and you're like, oh, I'll do it later. Well, now was the time. Next, I also had to define the mood I wanted, and the mood was kind of defined by music. I found 2 different tracks on Music Bed the other day while I was finding music for another video, and I was like, oh, that would sound good if I was to do that video idea of the photographer through Chicago. So I just saved those, and I thought I'll get back to that. Last part was simply gathering the gear. In terms of gear, I took my A7 III, I took a 1635 f2.8, that way I could shoot really wide and hopefully have less camera shake. We'll talk about that in the editing part and on location in just a second because that is very, very tricky. Now, once I had all that, I just needed a friend, so I rang Toby. Toby was game for it. Now let's go on location and let me explain to you how we were shooting it exactly, because it is tons of images together that will bring into a timeline that will make a video. It's basically a motion picture and you need all those pictures together in order to get it. So let's go on location and let me show you how we got the first few clips of that video. All right, so we just shot the first 1 second. It took us, what, 30 minutes?
About 30 minutes.
About 30 minutes. We only have 59 seconds left to go, so we should be done by tomorrow morning normally. So it might be day to night. We'll see.
It could happen.
Okay, so Toby, you picked up the camera and now we basically have a scene of you with that lens, and we're gonna have to come out of that lens and we're gonna follow you doing a hyperlapse towards one of the points. So I think we're gonna pick that flamingo as your point. You're off center and I'm gonna follow you doing it.
Let's do it.
And do a little rotation at the same time. So we'll see how that goes. So that wasn't without hiccups because I was moving a lot. So if you can bring a monopod with your tripod, I think it's gonna help a lot. And there was a trick that I used that some of the photographer gave me. They're like, if you know you're gonna have a lot of images and you wanna save time, shoot directly in JPEG into your camera. And that's what I was doing. I was shooting in JPEG, so I had to make sure my exposure was right and was kind of staying constant. If clouds would move in and out, that would change a little bit the scene, and that wasn't working as well. So we really had to work on all those aspects. And the most important when you're shooting those hyperlapses or those stop motions is actually transition. I basically came out of Toby's lens with the camera, took 1 shot, 1 step back, another shot, and then in the 360 around him, taking a shot every like 30-degree angles, and then I went back around, went back into his head right here, and we're gonna transition into his own time lapse right now. So he's doing a hyperlapse at the same time, and he's gonna end up under the flamingo, and we're gonna turn around. So it's all about finding the way you want to transition from one place to another, and that's actually the creative part in my opinion when you're doing those hyperlapses, those like stop motions, is how do you transition from one place to the other in a cool way. I think we have a bunch of ideas for after also. You've already seen it obviously, but it's all about finding new ways to do it. So, and that's totally up to you. That's the cool part. After a few more hours and a ton more trials, one of the most difficult was actually getting the rotating shots, because you want to keep the same distance between you and your subject. So you want to be on a perfect circle. Some people actually use a rope that they tie to their foot and to the foot of the model. That way they keep the same distance. I actually didn't do it, so it's not perfect, but it kind of worked okay in my opinion. If I have to do it again, I will use that trick. Now I'm gonna do another time-lapse kind of thing right here, going into the Chicago sign. So you're going to hold it like that, yeah, and you're just gonna go into it. I'm gonna follow Toby walking inside, and we're gonna look up. I was following him walking, and what we realized is that, tell us about the steps, because that was weird.
So what we tried to do first was one step, then alternating step, then alternating step. But you can't really see the transition between the feet. It actually looks like I'm floating. It looks like I'm repeatedly doing this motion. So we decided to add in a third step to give it a bit more an exaggerated feel. So we went from that, to that, to that, to that. And hopefully that will give us more of a animated, exaggerated feel, just to break up the staccato nature of the shots.
And that's really the cool part when you're doing stop motion, is you can play with those movements. Even if you wanted to float the whole time, you could, right?
Might be a little bit corny, just a little
maybe,
bit. Just
maybe not. It's up to you. I'm never gonna judge you guys. All right, guys, we're reaching a little bit towards the end, right?
Yep.
We did the bean. We finished on his t-shirt that looked really cool. Shoot, eat, sleep, repeat. Kind of a nice ending word. At the bean, super busy, so we had to fight a little bit for the central spot. We wanted to do a 360 around it, not gonna happen.
Yeah, there was some fencing here that just didn't allow.
Some fencing, and again, every step, one photo. He was like kind of static, so that was much easier. I think we might try a 360 over there.
Yeah.
At the water.
Let's do it.
Yeah. You may come out of the water now. Last but not least, I kind of wanted to wrap the story with the same starting point as end point. It wasn't exactly the same location, which might have been a little bit better in hindsight, but I really wanted to wrap up the story where this photographer found the camera on the floor with a little message that apparently you guys couldn't see, but it says you are what you create, and it just wraps around on the floor. It like blows away with the wind. Couldn't see it, it's okay. So Toby grabbed the camera, started shooting through Chicago, and the goal was to drop the camera again and put that little piece of paper saying it's your turn now to go shoot. And that is how I kind of wrap up the story as a whole loop. We're done with the shoot. I think we got it all.
I think we got it all.
We got it all. We tried a bunch of transition, guys. We're gonna meet in the editing room right now. I'm gonna show you how I'm gonna put it together, how it's gonna work out, and the best practice. I mean, I'm gonna try the best practice. So Toby, thanks a lot, man. You're the best. Everyone, go check out Toby
Shinobi
on Instagram, and well, let's meet in the editing room. And now, guys, the most important, it's time to put the camera down and start editing. Oh yeah, I know, it's literally the nightmare part in my opinion. But the cool thing is that you have a bunch of different ways that you can actually edit a hyperlapse. And I might put some resources in the description for you guys, whether it's music, whether it's actually other videos showing you exactly different processes if you use a different software. But let me explain to you. All right, now you're back home, you have all your files. Make sure you name them in an order, meaning a sequence. That will make it easier to import. So if you're using Premiere, what you're going to do is simply go to Premiere and then press import, find your folder, select the first image of the sequence, tick the box, import as sequence, and then that's it. You can drag it over there in your timeline and it's going to have all the images combined together. Now, if you're using Final Cut Pro, just select all the images you wanted to be imported, drag them in your timeline, and then retime each image to be, for example, 2 frames in a 24 frames per second timeline. What it means is that there's going to be 12 frames per second in that timeline. And it's a little choppy, but I like going that way because after I can actually change the duration later on when I create clips. We'll talk about that a little bit after, especially when I do stabilizing. Last thing you want to do is scale a little bit your clips so that they match the 16:9 ratio of video. And that's where the tip of shooting straight into JPEG comes very handy. If you had to edit raw files, you would have to do everything into Lightroom and then move to Final Cut or Premiere, but here you can do it straight into Final Cut or Premiere, which is super practical in my opinion. You save a lot of time. For now, that's what I did. I basically dropped that and created a bunch of smaller clips from those images. Now the next step is actually to get a good soundtrack. Now you might be thinking, why so early? We didn't even stabilize. My opinion is that there might be a bunch of clips that you might be dropping because you don't want to use them, and it's important for you to have your mood, and it makes it easier for me to edit when I have a soundtrack playing in my head. And as I mentioned, I found 2 tracks that I really love, and whenever I need music I go to a website called MusicBed. It's really awesome, and contrary to some of the free music or like licensed free music that you can use that sounds a little bit fake or I don't know, artificial, I don't know how to say it, it just doesn't sound like real music you would listen to the radio. On MusicBed it sounds amazing, and I just sort or filter depending on the mood I want, depending on the BPM, and I just save the ones I like. And if you guys want, I actually put up a little playlist with five or six tracks that you can use that I thought were good for hyperlapses or time lapses. MusicBed has 30-day free trial, which is awesome, so you guys can use it for one of your projects. And if you do, please send me your project. I'd love to see what you created, what hyperlapse you just did. So I had 2 choices of music. The next step will help me define which track I was going to use. The next step was simply to stabilize my footage, because as you might have realized, that looked terrible. It was shaking in all directions, and there are a few ways you can stabilize your footage. If you did it like me, straight into Premiere or Photoshop, it's fairly easy. Once you have all your clips together, what I recommend you is either to nest it together or to create a compound clip, or simply to export it as a video file and then re-import it into your time frame. What it will allow you to do is bring all those clips together and have an overview of the whole time lapse. And as you can realize, it is shaky as hell. How to stabilize? If you're on Final Cut, there is stabilize tick box. If you're on Premiere, there is something called warp stabilizer. You can drop it on your clip and it's supposed to make it a little bit better. Now, if I'm super honest with you, I struggled like hell to do that. Why is that? Simply, as I mentioned, maybe I should have used a monopod. Maybe some of my shots were not locked enough on my subject. Maybe I changed the distance a little bit when I was moving. And we really went for shots that are very difficult. Like moving sideways with an object is very difficult in my opinion. But when you edit, you can actually stabilize it a little bit, which makes it look better. As you can see, the before and after is pretty impressive. And after a few hours, I finally managed to stabilize all my footage, and I added my 2 soundtracks just to see how it sounded. And I actually decided to go for the one that had a little bit higher beat, simply because it was flowing faster in my opinion with the hyperlapse. The other track is great, but I kind of want to use it for something that's a little bit slower, maybe in the future. So that was my thought process for the mood, because the music literally defines all the mood into your video. If you don't put any music, it's completely different. It's a little bit boring. Now you put the music on top of that and it changes everything. Now I have the clips, I have the music, and the next step is basically to refine all the transitions and also accelerate some parts versus others. And as you can see, that took me a very long time, but once I was done, that was super satisfying. Last but not least, I added a few sound effects just to give a little bit of ambient noise to your footage, to your hyperlapse. It makes a lot of difference in the feeling you get as a viewer. And then that's it. You are done. You can export that clip, and that's going to be your hyperlapse. And that is the most satisfying part when you press export and it looks great. So yeah, here we go guys, you've got all my mistakes, my secrets, everything. Now it's your turn. I want to see what you're going to shoot. If you do shoot a hyperlapse, send it to me and Toby on Instagram at TobyShinobi and at PLTLambert. We want to see what you're doing. If you need music for your video, please make sure you check out MusicBed. I'm super honest with you. I've been using it for maybe 2 years now and I absolutely love their tracks. It just sounds like great music. So you have 30 days for free. If you're making a hyperlapse, why don't you use one of the tracks I put in the playlist to see how good your hyperlapse is gonna be and what kind of mood you're going to be choosing. I'm super pumped to see your results. Anyway, with that being said guys, I will see you in the next episode. Get out there, go shoot, try something different, try something new. Oh yeah, even if it's gonna take you 16 hours, it's worth it. I'll see you in the next episode. See ya, bye. Toby, who's next?
You are next.